Hello and welcome to the video. My name is Ryan and thank you so much for checking out the channel and for checking out my Bond casual discussion videos. So today we're going to be talking about The Man with the Golden Gun, and as per usual we will start off by actually looking at the cover here. And then on the inside, make sure, yeah. Let's make sure you can actually see the cover nicely there. Cool. Yeah. So, in terms of like how I went in with reading this book, since I was aware that this is the final like full-length Bond novel that Sir Ian Fleming wrote before he passed away, I was a lot more lenient with like certain things I would be nitpicky about in the previous books, just because I'm aware he didn't. I think he just did the like the first draft more or less of the book, so he didn't get to go through all the editing or all the refining that he would usually go through while going through the process. So with that in mind, I was a bit more generous, I suppose, with the scoring from what I understand compared to what most people would review or do review this book. So overall, I actually did quite enjoy The Man with the Golden Gun, and I believe if Sir Ian Fleming didn't die when he did, and he was given, I don't know how long his writing and editing process usually is, but if he was given more time, I think this could very well have been a contender for the best book. Sorry, someone's popped me in the back. For like one of the best books in the franchise. The introduction is absolutely fantastic. The first two chapters, I think it is, are really good, really captivating. I think it is the first two chapters, yeah. Let's have a look. Where's the start of chapter 3? That Blades. I don't know, is it 3 chapters? 4 chapters then? James Bond. Okay, yeah, so I think it's the first 3 chapters then. First 3 chapters are a fantastic introduction, potentially the best in the franchise. The next like set of chapters then introduces Scaramanga, which also was generally, I feel like, if I'm remembering them all correctly, if I remember it in the correct spot, generally like just as good or sort of in the same quality bracket as the introduction. There's a little bit of a dip then nearing the like the end of the center section of the story going into the climax. It kind of dips down a bit for me, and then the climax I thought was really good as well, and the conclusion to the story I really enjoyed. So overall, it is a really good story. I'll go into it in more detail, obviously, in a second. But unlike the other James Bond books, with the exception of like Quantum of Solace, which is a short story, not an actual Bond book, I don't think there is any other story which is so different between the movie and the book. Other than Bond, obviously like M and the Secret Service, Mary Goodnight and Scaramanga, I don't think there's anything else between the book and the movie that are the same. The book is set in Jamaica, because Fleming loves Jamaica. The movie is set in Thailand, predominantly. Scaramanga does not have like a really nice house on an island. He doesn't have a weird sort of, I don't know, house of mirrors, house of games, whatever you want to call it. He doesn't have a henchman named Knick Knack. Sadly, I think Knick Knack's great. So yeah, Knick Knack is not a character in the book either. What else happens in the book? Bond or the Secret Service never gets sent a golden bullet with 007 written on it to like indicate that he's a target for Scaramanga. He never goes to the gunsmith who created at least the bullets for Scaramanga. Scaramanga also doesn't have a golden gun, which is an assortment of like objects that you piece together to create the gun to make it so he can get it in and out of any location. It's just a regular gun, which is gold. Also, he shoots silver bullets, if I remember correctly, and the gun doesn't have a single bullet capacity in the book. So the gun operates like entirely differently. The only similarity is that it's gold and it's Scaramanga's. Everything else about the golden gun is also just not the same at all. Um, Lighter is involved in the man with the golden gun. Here again, we get our good buddy Lighter back. I'm pretty sure Felix was not in the movie, or if he's in the movie, he is so small that, like, you know, again, in this one, he's probably like, it's not 50-50 between him and Bond, because he's not in the introduction, he's not in the early stages where Bond meets Scaramanga, but then when Scaramanga works with, when Bond works with Scaramanga at his hotel, that's when you're introduced with Felix. So Felix is like sort of in 50% of the story. So he's like 25, maybe 30, 40% of the story. So, you know, he is helpful. He helps Bond, obviously, in the climax. He gets into another situation where he risks his life and nearly dies. So it all goes negatively for Felix again in the line of duty. But yeah, so the actual book and movies are practically night and day. It's wild how different they are. So basically, this one starts off with, it directly continues from You Only Live Twice. Bond has seemingly recovered from his amnesia. He's making his way back to London. He wants to see M. He wants to speak to M directly. He goes through all like the people he knows, talks to everyone, tries to convince them that he is in fact Bond, and Bond did not die during the case in Japan. He eventually manages to convince everyone that he is James Bond, and M decides to veto everyone else's objections, and he agrees to meet him. So Bond and M then have a meeting in M's office. So essentially, Bond can debrief him on everything that happened in that mission, where he's been for the last, I can't remember if it's a year or 6 months or something, but for a prolonged period of time. And then we find out through Bond that after he got amnesia, or after he lost his memory, due to being shot in the head, being punched repeatedly in the head, and falling down a trap hole and smacking his head on the floor, he eventually, as you find out in the previous book as well, he reads a little bit of Russian, I believe it is, on a newspaper that I can't remember her name, but the Bond girl in that in that book tried hiding from him. He makes his way to Russia. Eventually, the KGB, I believe it is, or whoever the Russian service is, manages to get Bond, and they basically brainwash him. They convince him that M and the British Secret Service have been using him, and they treat him as a tool and an object and not as a person. And basically, they turn him into a time bomb to try to assassinate M. And it's, like I say, it's a fantastic scene. The build up to it, the tension is amazing. M's realization as Bond is saying, oh yeah, the Russians were great, they treated me really nicely, they gave me all the best care available for mental issues, so they could help me recover as best as I could. And M is very quickly realizing that Bond has been compromised. He pushes the emergency button, and a bulletproof window, or whatever you want to call it, bulletproof shield drops down and protects M. So thankfully he doesn't get killed. Bond is then apprehended. M states that he's not going to fire Bond, he's not going to press charges against Bond, he's not going to demote him or anything like that. He is in fact going to force him to take on the Scaramanga case, stating that if you can be brainwashed, you can be unbrainwashed. And then the chief of staff calls him a heartless bastard for giving him the Scaramanga case, because he's not someone that that you want to be put up against. He's a fantastic marksman and what have you, just like in the movie version. So that remains the same. After that, then we just skip ahead to when Bond is in Jamaica trying to find Scaramanga. And now, in a book where Fleming did not die before he could finalize everything, this would be a massive critique for me. As it stands, I feel like it was done just due to time. He knew he didn't have the time to write more. Like, realistically, there should have been 1, 2, maybe even 3 chapters here with Bond being essentially like reprogrammed, being mentally healed, having the brainwashing removed, deprogrammed, and slowly easing him back in mentally, and then sending him off on his job. As it is, we just find out that they do like electroshock therapy on him, and then it skips ahead. So it's really disappointing because it should have been like in Thunderball. I can't remember what the place is called, but when he goes to the health clinic to try to improve his health because M went and he thought it was great, and Bond could only benefit from it. It should have been something like that, but sadly you don't get that. And then, like I say, Bond goes to Jamaica and he's trying to find a Scaramanga. Going through his his investigative process, he eventually finds this place called the 3.5 house? Let me have a look here. Yeah, the 3.5 number 3.5 Love Lane, which is essentially a whorehouse. He goes there because he knows that Scaramanga is going to be there, and he knows Scaramanga is going to be there because he found a letter or a parcel or something addressed to him, I believe is what it was. I can't remember where he found that, but he did find like some sort of letter or something that indicated that he would be there. Bond goes there, and after some amount of time, Scaramanga does show up. The woman who works there that Bond was getting on with and just having a chat and everything hates Scaramanga because he shot her 2 birds and killed them. Which I guess they needed to do to show off how good his marksmanship was at this early point. The only problem I have with this scene is at this point, Bond, throughout the book now and again, which is another low point for me, which I believe if he had more time, these would have been fleshed out and would have been very enjoyable. But he kind of just like has nightmares or daydreams, and they just kind of suddenly happen in the story. And if you're not, like, if your brain is not 100% engaged and you sort of passively read a couple of lines and you're not fully zoned in, you won't realize that you've entered into a dream and you're really confused of what's happening. Like in this case, that's what happened. I had to reread the part because it mentions about the birds being shot and then like the dead bodies, and Bond like saw his life flash before his eyes and he was on the floor dead, and the woman was screaming, and I was so confused. And like as it was referring to seeing how proficient that Scaramanga was killing the birds. That then made Bond realise what he was up against, and his life flashed before his eyes. After this, then Bond and Scaramanga do start talking, because basically Scaramanga, you find out later on anyway, he's after a patsy. Basically, he wants someone to be the fall guy in a job that he's setting up. He finds this man just in a whorehouse, and he thinks he will be the right man for the job, not realizing who this man was. They get to talking. He agrees to do a job for him for £1,000 or £2,000. I can't remember how much it is, but it's one of the two, I believe. Bond agrees, obviously, and then they go to this like dilapidated hotel. And the crux of it, the spiel that Scaramanga gives is, I need you to come as like a personal assistant to write down, all what's happening basically, as a personal assistant would, while I do these while I have these meetings and try to schmooze up to these people to get them to invest in the hotel, is basically what it is. And then again, this is where you're introduced to Leiter and his part in the story, which is he is one of the what do you call it? front of something. Basically, they work in the like the front for the hotel. Where if you were like getting a room, they'd give you the keys and everything. Front of house, I think it's called. Um, both I think his name is Nicole or Nicholas Nicholson or something. Basically, Scaramanga did a load of messing up. He bought Bond as his PA, and he's got Felix Leiter and another FBI or CIA agent as his front of house. And then through Bond's, like being sneaky and listening in on conversations, and through finding out that Leiter has also bugged things as well, you find out that basically the people who are here are like gangsters, as you'd expect, similar to what happens with Goldfinger and bringing all the gangs together to try to knock Fort Knox. They are bringing in these gangsters because they are. It's. I think they're trying to create like a shortage of sugarcane. I think it was, like they are burning sugarcane fields to create an artificial or create an actual shortage, so they can like rack up the prices on that. I believe was a big part of it. I always seem to forget a big part of the scheme of what they're doing. But the only other member that's really important is Mr. Hendricks, or Hendrickson, was it? Which one was it? I think it's Mr. Hendricks. And basically Mr. Hendricks is a Russian gangster, and I believe he works like the CIA. I don't think he worked for Smersh. I think the Smersh are completely gone now. But he's the one who's on to Bond. He suspects him, and eventually through his like intervention with going back to base and stuff, Scaramanga is informed that this man, whose name I cannot remember, his alias name anyway, is in fact Bond. Let's see if I can't find the alias. And then as a result, Scaramanga decides he wants to have fun with it. He doesn't want to just outward say to Bond, I know you're Bond and I'm going to kill you. He decides to allow the facade to remain, and he wants to kill Bond in a very personally entertaining and like sort of flashy way, and as a way just to show off basically. Because they go on a train, I think it is, like an outdoor train or a roofless train, I guess, as well, because he shoots birds while on the train. So they're on some sort of transport, and he decides he's going to kill Bond on this, on this expedition, on this trip. But Bond is listening in on the conversation, so he is aware that Scaramanga wants to do this. And then the evening before, it's either the evening or the morning, no, it's the morning. The morning of while Scaramanga is doing his morning exercises, he sneaks into his room and he fiddles with the gun. I think he takes the bullet out of the chamber. So if Scaramanga goes to shoot Bond, the first bullet won't, it's not there, it won't appear, nothing will happen. And that will give Bond the edge he needs to defeat Scaramanga. And then as they are getting this journey underway for a little bit of hunting and for Scaramanga to kill Bond in front of all the other gangsters, he decides to shoot his gun twice into the air, then discovering his gun had been slightly tampered with, ruining and foiling Bond's one of advantage in that scenario, which is devastating to Bond. But as they are then on the journey, Scaramanga reveals basically that he knows he's Bond. He shoots right past his head and makes some joke about there being a rat. I can't remember what else he says on the build up to it, but on the build up then he basically states that Mary Goodnight, his old school damsel in distress, woman tied up on a train track, that she's been put on the track and they're going to run her over. And he knows about Mary Goodnight because she snuck into Bond's hotel room the night before to warn him basically that Hendricks had been calling back to base to get a detailed description on Bond. So that's also how Scaramanga knows about her, because he snuck into the room as well. And he trusted Bond at this point. Like, all right, I suspect something here, but I will believe that you are who you say you are. And then obviously in the morning he finds out he's actually Bond, and this is when like the climax starts to build up then. And then when they're on the actual train, when he eventually then starts shooting at Bond, he drops down and he sees Mary Goodnight as the train runs her over, cutting her head off. Bond is instantly like devastated, but at the last second he realizes that this is in fact a mannequin and not Mary Goodnight, and it was Scaramanga just completely fucking with him. Turns out as well, Felix Leiter was on the back of the train. I'll just call it a train. I can't remember if it is in fact a train, but he's on the back, and then both Bond and Leiter. Oh yeah, it says back of the train. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So Bond and Leiter then sort of pincer attacking Scaramanga, Hendrix, and the other gangsters. Bond shoots Hendrix right between the eyes, killing him. He gets shot, I believe it's in the left or the right shoulder, Bond himself. But he also shoots Scaramanga as well, wounding him. And at this point then, Felix is like, right, okay, I've got this under control. You jump off the train and I will deal with these guys. And after like a few moments of hesitation, Bond does jump off the train, landing in a marsh, absolutely disgusted by the smell. Moments later, someone else jumps off the train, and then someone else jumps off the train. You find out that Scaramanga was not dead, and Felix was bested, basically. He is now like with a horrendously broken leg, I believe, so Bond has to help him get to the side, and then he leaves him to it. Bond then is in pursuit of Scaramanga. He eventually finds him pinned up against a tree, heavily wounded, and then Scaramanga kills the snake. He sees a snake coming towards him. He stabs it with his knife that he had on him, because at this point he's lost his gun as well after the whole altercation. He cuts up the snake and starts eating the snake alive. Bond, not alive, he's eating it raw, sorry. Bond shows himself, states that he is going to kill Scaramanga. And this is the part where the whole notion that Bond detests killing in cold blood, this is brought up once or twice in other books, but this one is when it really like hammers it in. Bond does not like to kill in cold blood. So after finally bringing up the courage to eventually kill him, tells Scaramanga, right, like, this is the end of the road, I'm going to kill you now. Scaramanga then pleads with him to allow him to say a prayer, since he's a Catholic, which Bond foolishly agrees to. And as he's doing his prayer, he slowly grabs I think it's a dagger or something from behind his head, and he throws it at Bond. And this was also infected, I guess I'll just say, with the snake venom, so Bond has also been poisoned. And Scaramanga wins. Bond is on the floor dying, well, not dying, like heavily wounded. Scaramanga stands over him in victory, and then in that moment, the wounds that he had sustained up until this point are too much, and he just dies on the spot. I haven't double checked to see if it was like the snake venom or if it was the gunshot that killed him, but as he's standing over Bond, triumphant, about to snuff the life out of him, he dies and falls backwards, and then that is the end of Scaramanga. So in this moment of triumph, his body just gave in on him. Bond then wakes up, I think it's like a week later, having thankfully been saved from the venom, because one of the people, like one of the paramedics or police officers, decided to give him an anti-venom because he noticed that I think he noticed he was poisoned, or he noticed that there was something up. So he thankfully saved Bond's life. The book then ends with Bond in the hospital still, and Mary Goodnight has come to see him, and she's got a fax from M, and basically Bond has been offered a knighthood. And it's like this very nice moment where Bond will be Sir James Bond, and of course in Bond fashion he rejects the knighting, states he doesn't want that sort of business. He appreciates it, but it's just not for him. And that's basically where the book ends. Is there anything specific? Well, and then also realize, I guess, he also realizes that he will be a bachelor forever. It says like that the love of Mary Goodnight just, or the love of any woman just won't be enough, I believe is what it said then when I quickly glanced at it. So it just kind of reinforcing the status quo of Bond. And as I say, I gave it a slightly generous, generous score, not really holding the negatives against it too much. Like the daydreams, which felt a bit half baked, the skipping over the rehabilitation that really should have been a big focus for the early part, are the two main ones. But I gave The Man with the Golden Gun an 8 out of 10. Really enjoyable book, has its flaws, but you got to put it into its context. It's very understandable when you factor that Sir Ian Fleming did die not too long. Well, he died before this book was actually officially published. So, to be fair to him, he done a really good job considering all things. I think it could have easily been like a 9 out of 10, maybe even a 10 out of 10, if he had the time he would usually have. Let me know what you think of The Man with the Golden Gun, and let me know how you would rank it against the other Bond books. And I will see you in the next video with Octopussy and the Living Daylights, which will be the conclusion to the series I'm doing in terms of actually reviewing the individual books. I'll then do at least one more video where I will be ranking all of the Bond books and going from my least favourite to my favourite. Thank you, and take care. Bye now.